October 17th, 1982. The south face of Annapurna, Nepal, Alex McIntyre had spent 4 days on one of the world's most dangerous walls on a total expedition budget of $5,500. He had 2 rock pythons left. These were his terrifying last hours. Not on the Grand Jurasses, not on the walls of Khoi Bendaka. Alex McIntyre had done things most mountaineers only read about in journals they couldn't afford to buy. At 22 years old, he was already rerouting how the entire sport would be climbed. Small teams, no fixed ropes, no camps laid behind you like a ladder back to safety. Just the mountain and whoever was willing to move fast enough. When he walked into the pubs where climbers gathered, the room went quiet. They called him Dirty Alex. But Alex never came back. The part that bothers me about this story is that it wasn't just bad luck. It was a chain. A set of circumstances so specific and so invisible that nobody watching from base camp could have seen them coming. Welcome to Tourist Tragedies. To understand why Alex McIntyre's death is so hard to accept, you need to understand what he had already survived. In August of 1976, Alex and his partner Nick Colton looked up at the north face of the Grandes Jurassi. This is one of the great walls of the Alps, a 3,600-foot sweep of ice and rock above Chamonix in France that had broken serious climbers for decades. Dougal Haston had studied a particular line up that face and walked away. Chris Bonington had tried it. Neither had succeeded. Alex was 22 years old. He and Colton climbed the entire thing in 2 days. No fixed ropes, no support team waiting below them, no siege camp they could retreat to if something went wrong. They moved as fast as the mountain allowed, with a single bivouac on the face. That is the equivalent of climbing about 2.5 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other, from the outside, on ice and rock, without ropes fixed below you, in 2 days. And honestly, when you sit with what that actually means, you need a second, because this was not luck. Alex McIntyre had made a decision, and the decision was not about which mountain to climb. It was about how. The whole established approach to the biggest mountains in the world relied on siege tactics. You fixed ropes and built camps over weeks, and you worked the mountain down until it gave. Alex said that was not climbing. That was construction. 2 people in a single pack was climbing. That route still carries both their names, the Colton-MacIntyre. It is considered one of the defining alpine routes of the 20th century. It is nearly unbelievable when you understand how they did it. How does someone become this? Alex McIntyre was born on March 5, 1954, in Cottingham, a small town in East Yorkshire, England. His parents were Scottish and Catholic, and when the family moved south to Lechmore Heath, just outside London, Alex found himself at Watford Grammar School, where he was quickly identified as unusually gifted. He earned 4 grade A's at A-level. He received an offer to read at Cambridge. He turned it down. He chose Leeds instead, because Leeds was closer to the crags. That single decision tells you almost everything about who Alex McIntyre was going to become. At Leeds University in the early 1970s, he joined the Mountaineering Club. The Leeds University Mountaineering Club was one of the most serious in Britain at that time, and it was full of people who would go on to become significant figures in the sport. Alex arrived as a raw, slightly chaotic, absolutely focused young man. He wore what he could afford, which was not much. He lived as he liked, which meant loose and free and perpetually broke. Perpetually broke. That lifestyle earned him the nickname Dirty Alex, a name that stuck not because anyone thought less of him, but because it captured something true about how he moved through the world. He was not interested in appearances. He was interested in the mountains. He started on the Yorkshire Gritstone routes near Leeds. Then he traveled north to Scotland to learn winter climbing. On March 14, 1975, just turned 21, he soloed 2 of the most demanding test pieces on Ben Nevis in a single day. 0 gully first, then 0.5 gully, alone in winter. These were routes that most climbers attempted with a partner after years of preparation. Alex walked up and did both before most of his peers had even seen a Scottish winter. From that point, the question was not whether Alex McIntyre would do something significant. The question was scale. He told his friend and future climbing partner, John Porter, exactly what he wanted. No smile, no bravado. He said, "I want to be one of the world's all-time great mountaineers." He meant it the same way someone else might say they intended to pass their law exams. Specific and inevitable. He was studying law at Leeds as it happened. Not because it softened anything, because it suited his argumentative nature. He started looking at the Alps, then beyond the Alps, and he started making lists. Between 1976 and 1982, Alex McIntyre went on a run that only a handful of climbers in the history of the sport have ever matched. The Colton-MacIntyre was just the opening statement. In 1977, Alex was part of the small team that made the first ascent of the northeast face of Khoi Bandaka, a remote and serious peak in the Hindu Kush mountains of Afghanistan. The face was technically extreme. The journey to reach it was something else entirely. The team had traveled partly by slipping through the Soviet Union on forged papers in the middle of the Cold War, because that was what it took, and Alex considered that a logistics problem rather than a reason to stay home. Returning from that trip, he turned straight around and completed the first alpine-style ascent of the Eiger Direct in 3 days with Tobin Sorensen, the Eiger Direct. Possibly the most notorious route in the Alps at that time. Multiple teams had attempted it and failed. Alex had just returned from something far more serious in Afghanistan, and he described the Eiger accordingly. He said it was a dawdle after Khoi Bandaka. The Eiger Direct, a dawdle. That is not bravado. That is someone who has entirely recalibrated what the word difficult actually means. By 1978, he was on the south face of Changabong and the Garhwal Himalaya. This is a route that members of his generation's best climbing teams had looked at and concluded was probably impossible to climb. Alex and John Porter climbed it anyway. 2 people, a route that has not been repeated in the decades since. Through all of this, Alex was building something that went beyond individual climbs. He worked with Polish climbers at a moment in history when that required crossing borders that politics had tried to seal permanently. He climbed with Wojtek Kurtyka, widely regarded as one of the greatest alpinists of the 20th century. And together, they pushed the idea that the answer to the high mountains was never more people and more gear and more time. It was 2 people, a light pack, and the commitment to go. No fixed lines running back to safety. You moved under your own power, or you did not move at all. He served as a national officer for the British Mountaineering Council between expeditions. He argued for climbers' access rights, for the idea that the mountains belonged to anyone willing to earn them honestly. He was 25. He was 26. He was doing the work of someone twice his age and climbing like someone who expected to live forever. When he walked into a pub after an expedition, the room changed. Other climbers watched him the way people watch someone who has become exactly what they set out to become. He was that kind of presence. Then, in the spring of 1982, just months before Annapurna, he made the first alpine-style ascent of the southwest face of Shishapangma in Tibet. He climbed it with Doug Scott. Before that trip, he had written exactly 1 sentence about what the whole enterprise meant to him. He said, "The wall was the ambition. The style became the obsession." By the autumn of 1982, Alex McIntyre was 28 years old, fit, internationally recognized as the leading edge of a new era in alpinism. He was planning more expeditions. He was planning a legal career. He had a girlfriend named Sarah who loved him, and 7 Himalayan expeditions behind him, and the best years of his climbing life somewhere ahead. Life was quite simply perfect. October 13th, 1982. The post-monsoon season in Nepal, cold and crystal clear in the way that only arrives in the Himalaya at that time of year, when the monsoon has finally gone and the jet stream has not yet descended all the way. White plumes blowing off the summit ridges above, the sound of the glacier shifting below. Alex and René Gallini, a French alpinist and mountain guide from Chamonix, left base camp and started up the south face. John Porter stayed behind. John had come down sick. Dysentery most likely, made worse by altitude and by being 10 years older than the other 2. He had waited one extra day to recover. He could not. Alex and Renee waited one more day. Then they left without him. The plan was to climb the south face in 3 days and descend the opposite side. The total expedition budget was $5,500. 29 porters had carried everything from the road to base camp at 14,000 feet when they arrived on September 15th. Think about that number, $5,500. A commercial guided climb on an 8,000-meter peak today costs $50,000 to $70,000 per person in fees and logistics alone. Alex McIntyre's entire team operated on $5,500 because the whole point was to carry exactly what you needed and nothing more. During the acclimatization period in September, Porter had noticed something important about this face. In the afternoon, when the sun hit the upper sections, the heat loosened rock that had been frozen overnight. It fell in a continuous stream across the entire 5-mile width of the face. The sound it made was an eerie rumble and whine. The team had consoled themselves with the thought that October would be better. Shorter days, colder temperatures, the face would stay locked. That assumption matters. It will matter later. Alex and Renee moved well. On the afternoon of October 15th, Porter spotted 2 tiny dots at half height on the face, between overhanging walls above and below. Moving through terrain nobody had climbed before. The next morning, October 16th, Porter watched them try to break through a compact rock band above their position. They tried one line, then a second, then a third. Nothing worked. The rock was vertical and sealed. They had 2 rock pitons between them. 2. They made the right call. They turned around. They bivouacked one final time on the face and prepared to descend in the morning. Porter made himself tea. He waited. To understand what happens next, you need to understand what the south face of Annapurna actually is. Annapurna is not Everest. It is not the highest mountain in the world. It ranks 10th. But Annapurna is the most dangerous mountain on Earth by fatality rate. For every 3 people who have ever reached the summit, roughly 1 person has died attempting it, around 33%. K2, which most people consider the most lethal, sits at closer to 22%. The south face is at the center of that number. The face is 5 miles wide and rises nearly vertically from the glacier below. It is not clean rock. It is a compressed mixture of ice, loose stone, and snow sitting on itself at extreme angles. The problem is heat. As the sun works across the upper sections of the face through the day, the rock that has been frozen in place overnight begins to shift. Stones detach, sometimes small ones, sometimes larger. They fall down the natural drainage lines of the face, the channels that anything heavy will always follow, accelerating as they go. This is called stone fall. It is one of the most feared hazards in high-altitude climbing precisely because it operates entirely outside of any decision you can make. A stone falling from 2,000 feet travels at the speed of a car on a motorway by the time it arrives. You cannot hear it in time. You cannot dodge it. You can only avoid being in its path. Experienced climbers manage this by moving early, while the face is still cold. The danger window opens as the face heats. Alex and Renee had managed this correctly. They were moving at 10 in the morning. The face should still have been locked. But October changes the sun angle. What is a safe hour in August is not the same safe hour in October. The window opens earlier than anyone in that era fully understood. The mathematics shift without announcing themselves. That is the part nobody could have known. Quick heads up. Every week I drop new videos you won't find anywhere else. Please subscribe. October the 17th, 1982, 9:30 in the morning. John Porter stands at base camp with his camera lens pressed to his face. He cannot eat. He cannot stop watching. At 10 o'clock, 2 dots appear at the lip of the couloir at the foot of the face. Alex and Renee cross it, cleanly, step after step. They move to the crest of a small spur of snow and rock above. Porter feels the tension leave his shoulders. The couloir is behind them. The hard terrain is behind them. He is going to make hot food, and they are all going to come in cold and exhausted and fine. He watches the first figure step onto the spur. He looks again. There is 1 dot where there were 2. He tells himself there is another explanation. There is not. Somewhere above them, thousands of feet up the face, a single stone had broken loose. Not a rock slide, not a collapse, a stone, roughly the weight of a large bag of flour. It fell in silence down the fall line for more than 2,000 feet. The south face of Annapurna does not announce these things. There is no warning. It hit Alex McIntyre on the back of the head. One moment he was moving, the next moment he was not. He fell 1,500 feet, down through the snow and ice, through the debris at the base of the wall, past the Bergschrund at the foot of the face, to the glacier below. René Guillini descended to him. He buried Alex there as best he could, with what he had. At base camp, John Porter watched one dot descend alone. He ran. Alex McIntyre was 28 years old. He had been on the south face of Annapurna for 4 days. He had climbed to 23,600 feet on a completely new route with no fixed lines, no support team below him, and a total budget of $5,500 for the entire expedition. He had made the correct decision to turn around when the rock band stopped him. He had descended through every significant technical danger on the route. He was approximately 1 hour from the glacier when the stone found him. René Guillini, alone at altitude and in shock, buried him at the foot of the face. Bad weather moved in over the following days, and Porter and his Sherpa could not return to the site. Alex McIntyre remains where René left him. Sarah Richard, Alex's girlfriend, was in England waiting for news. The call she received ended a conversation she had expected to continue for decades. She would later describe it precisely. "Death," she said, "is the end of dialogue." John Porter watched through his camera lens as his closest friend disappeared from a mountain he was supposed to survive. He spent the next 32 years working out how to write about it. The book he eventually published in 2014 won the grand prize at the Banff Mountain Book Festival. In the same year Alex died, Joe Tasker and Pete Boardman vanished on Everest's northeast ridge. An entire generation of British alpine-style climbers was gone inside 12 months. Alex was 28. When you lay the facts in sequence, a picture begins to form that is more complicated than a single stone and a moment of bad luck. The first factor is the expedition's philosophy. Light and fast, minimal hardware, no excess. 2 rock pythons for an 8,000-meter face. When Alex and René reached the compact rock band at 7,200 meters, they had nothing in reserve to break through it. The decision to descend was correct, but that decision placed them at the couloir at 10 in the morning on the 17th, which is where and when the stone came. The second factor is the season. The post-monsoon window in October shifts the sun angle on the south face. The face heats earlier than it does in summer months, which means the rockfall window opens earlier than the team could have fully calculated from what they knew in September. In September, the afternoon deluge had seemed obvious and avoidable. October moved that window without warning anyone. The third factor is geography. The spur they crossed after the couloir sits beneath a section of upper face that funnels falling debris directly through that line. Any stone released from the slopes above follows that fall line to the same point. The fourth factor is one that no decision on Earth could have changed. The stone was singular, one piece of rock. At any other moment, on any other step, it lands on empty glacier. Climbers call this the lottery. You can manage your decisions, you can manage your timing. You cannot manage one stone from 2,000 feet above you at the exact second you are in its path. Every hole in the Swiss cheese lined up perfectly. Before he left for Annapurna in the autumn of 1982, Alex McIntyre had written about what drove him. He said, "The wall was the ambition. The style became the obsession." He was not talking about one mountain. He was describing a life. Alex McIntyre died because every small, invisible failure lined up perfectly for a tragedy he could not have predicted. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think the risk was worth it? Because I have thought about that question every time I read about him, and I genuinely still do not know the answer.